Hello, welcome to White Davy Gardening and Worm Farm. My apologies, I forgot to silence my phone. Okay, so today we are going to be discussing worm tea. Hi, Cece, how are you? Yes, so we're going to be talking about worm tea. Oh, thank you, my dear. Thank you very much. So, I want to say thanks to all my supporters over the years who have gotten me to this point where I'm now monetized. So thank you very much for your support. So today we're going to be talking about worm tea, and I hope that you'll feel free to share your experience with worm tea. And if you are new to my channel, or if you have never had any experience with worm tea, but you have questions regarding worm farming or anything regarding vermicomposting, then please feel free to ask. There are no stupid questions, so you can ask whatever you like. So, before we go down deep into our discussion, I'm going to be explaining the difference between worm tea and leachate because a lot of times people get them mixed up or the term is used interchangeably when in fact they are similar but two different products. So, worm tea refer to worm casting that has been soaked in water for a period of time before it's used. Or and leachate. Oh, hi, Han White. Oh, thank you, my little sister. Yes, and leachate refers to that liquid that drains off your out of your worm bin when you moisten your bin or when you have a lot of food scraps that produce a lot of liquid or from the sweat or worm pee as some call it from the worms. So that is where that liquid come from, and that liquid is not worm tea but it is leachate. Now, the differences between them, apart from that one is soaked in the water, is that the worm tea has far more nutrients than what is found in leachate. So, leachate really has just a small amount of nutrients in it, but it can be used to water your garden, your seedlings, or your main garden, doesn't really matter which. But the leachate is still good because it has some amount of nutrients in there. So you can use it to water your plants. Now, for the worm tea, it only have a shelf life of 3 days, unless of course you keep it aerated. So, oh hi Makia, hey, how are you? Yes, so it only has a shelf life of 3 days, unless of course you keep it aerated. So if you are going to make worm tea, make sure that you make just enough that you're going to use within 3 days. Yes, so don't try to store it for too long. If you put it in the fridge, of course, it will last a little longer than the 3 days. I'm not sure how much longer, but in the fridge, it will last a little bit longer. Okay, so now we've looked at the difference between the worm tea and the leachate. So here's a question for you guys. For those of you who have a worm farm or those of you who have access to purchasing or getting worm castings, what do you use worm tea for? There are three major ways that worm tea can be used, or three reasons why worm tea is used. So I'd like to hear you guys' opinion on that, what you use worm tea for. So it serves three main purpose. So for me, I use it for pest control because, okay, use it as a fertilizer and white. Okay, yes. For me, I use it for pest control because it contains the chitinase that will help to break down the chitin that is found in some of the pests in our gardens. So I use it for that. And like Ann White says, I also use it for fertilizer because it is very rich in nutrients. In fact, the worm casting and the worm tea has far more nutrients than what can be found in regular compost. Plus, it has far more benefits than what you would get from compost. So I use it for the nutrients that it contains. The good thing about worm tea is that the casting is water soluble. So because it is water soluble, it means that when you put it in water, it's going to break down quickly, which make it very ideal for if you are starting seedlings. Then it is very good because the nutrients is readily available, and not just for your seedlings but for your main garden. So say for example, you notice that your plants are showing signs of nutrients deficiency, then having the worm tea, the plant will be able to absorb the nutrients faster than if you just use the regular castings. The regular casting will work quickly too, but the worm tea will work a little bit faster. So whenever you want to give your plants a quick boost, then you can use it. Now for the pest control, it is nice to use the worm tea to water your seedlings, especially if you're going to have them indoors, because you know how those pests just love indoor conditions. So using the worm tea will help to keep them under control. It won't get rid of them fully, but it will help to keep a lot of them under control. So you might want to consider using the worm tea. The advantage of the worm tea over the castings is that if you put the castings on the leaf of your plant, then it's gonna get blown off as soon as the wind comes. But then with the liquid, you can get the liquid to go over practically all of your plants. And that is how it is going to help with the pest control. Of course, the plant will absorb the nutrients from the castings from the soil, and that is also going to help to control pests. But then for the foliage of your plants, having the worm tea is really beneficial. Okay, so a point that I should make, unrelated to the discussion, is, and I think it is necessary for me to make this point at this time of the year, because a lot of you at this time will start to do videos regarding Christmas celebrations and stuff like that, or Halloween, and what is that thing called? We just had the holiday Thursday. What is it called? That thing where they honor the soldiers, Remembrance Day, yes. You might notice that when you do videos relating to these sort of holidays, I do not watch your videos. It is not because I stopped supporting your videos. It is just that I am one of Jehovah's Witnesses and I don't partake in anything regarding any national holidays or any practices that can be proven to be contrary to what the Bible teaches. So if you see me not watching your videos, do not be offended thinking that I'm no longer supporting you. No, that's not the case. I'm still supporting your videos. I'm just not watching those that I cannot watch. Okay? Yes, so back to the discussion. One of the things, the other thing that the worm casting is good for is that it helps plants that are not healthy. So sometimes it might be able to get rid of the problem that the plant is having. Sometimes it will just be able to strengthen the plant so that the plants can fight back. So this is the next benefit that comes from worm worm tea. and from the worm castings as well. So these are the three main benefits of worm tea. So have you guys ever used the worm tea for pest control or for plants that are unhealthy? Last year, well, this growing season was the first time that I've actually used the worm tea for plants that are not healthy, and I was quite amazed at the results. For some of you who have been following me for a while, you may have seen my videos that I did on my potatoes that I was growing in container and how they weren't doing so well. And so I did a test to see if the worm tea would actually help the potatoes. Let's see. And White says she's never used it for that. Okay. Yeah, so I decided to test to see whether or not the worm tea would help the potatoes. And in the first video that I did, I showed the potato plants and how unhealthy they seem. And then I did an update on it and I showed how the plants look after I applied the worm tea and the difference between the plant before using the worm tea and after using the worm tea was night and day. And then the next thing that I used it for this growing season is because most of you know that my plants had curly top virus, most of my plants. So they were just struggling. So I used the worm tea for them, and then I find that it did help the plants to fight back. They didn't really get rid of the problem, but at least the plants were able to fight back to the extent where I was able to have a reasonably good harvest. Not the best, but I was able to have a reasonably good harvest. So definitely having worm tea or worm casting is definitely worth it. Yes, and the next thing that I like about using, oh, hi, Helpy, how are you there? The next thing that I like about the worm tea, and this is an advantage of having the worm tea as opposed to the castings, is that when you're starting seedlings indoors or if you're growing in containers, sometimes your containers that you're growing in might be full. So there might not be space for you to add castings to supply nutrients for your plants. But then if you use that castings to make worm tea, then you can use that water to water your plants. So the plant at the same time, when it is getting the moisture that it needs, it will also be getting the nutrients that it needs without having to increase the volume of the material that is in your container. And it is very ideal for watering your seedlings for the same reason. So let's see. LP says cold and windy, but not snowing. So I am in the yard and happy. Okay, good for you. We had snow. Our snow started Tuesday night, and we had snow straight into Thursday morning. And unfortunately, I don't think this one is going to go away. I was hoping it would, but I don't think it is going away because we got about 3, 4 inches of it. So I think now the snow is here to stay, unfortunately. So I haven't been outside since it started snowing. I need to go out there though because I got to go look after my worms. I wanted to go yesterday because yesterday was one of the 2 days that I used to look after the worms in the garage, but I didn't have the courage to go out to go out in the cold to do that. But anyway, I know I can't put it off today, so I'm definitely gonna have to go out there. The fortunate thing is that unknown to me, a friend came over and shoveled the entire snow on the pathway, so I didn't have to go out there and do it. I only know that they did it after they rang the doorbell when they were finished. Didn't even know they were out there, so I was quite happy for that because I didn't have to do it. Let's see. LP says, "Oh, that is significant snow. Well, time for winter. Well, time for winter study. Yes, definitely time to do some studying. I have a lot of things that I need to catch up on. So I think I'll definitely be using the time indoors to catch up on all the paperworks that I've been logging behind in, all those details regarding my garden experience this year that I haven't been recording. I'm going to have the whole winter to do that. Let's see. Yes, it's very nice that they did that. It's not as if they even live anywhere close to me and they came over to do that for me. So it it was a really nice surprise. Yeah, so we were asking a few questions like, what do you use worm tea for? Because I know you just joined the live LP. So we were asking, what is it that you use worm tea for in your garden? Okay, so here's another question for you guys. How often do you use worm tea in your garden? I That question is one I can't really answer. I know that there's some people who use worm tea like very regularly. They're constantly using the worm tea in the garden. For me, for my seedlings, I use it regularly because every time I'm watering seedlings, then I try to use the worm tea. But regarding the garden, most of the time, if I don't have pests or if I don't yes, it's mostly when I have pests that I tend to use the worm tea, but I'm gonna try to use it a bit more frequently and more regularly. Let's see. Oh, you use it every 7 days. Okay, that's good. That is a pretty good practice using it every 7 days. I think I want to do that too, where I use it every 5 to 7 days because once it works as a pest control, and most of these pests within 5 to 7 days, they go from larvae to adults and then they start producing eggs. So it's a good idea to use it every 5 to 7 days. So it's something I'm going to have to get into the habit of doing. It will take a while for me to get into that habit, but I guess I have all of the winter to plan ahead how I'm going to go about doing so. Let's see. LP says this was my first growing season with regular castings, so I mainly just added the castings to the soil and my compost. Okay, good. I wonder what would happen if we use worm tea for when we're starting a compost pile. I know it will have the microbes and the nutrients in there to give the compost a quick start, but then will it actually help the compost to heat up faster, given that it contains some amount of nitrogen, which is what is needed to make the compost heat up? I wonder, I think I should do some experiment with that next year. Do two compost bins and then use one with the liquid fertilizer, liquid with worm tea, and see which one is going to heat up faster. Yeah, let's jot that down. I think I want to do that experiment. Okie dokie. Let's see. LP says later in the season, I mixed castings with water, let it sit for a few days, and water some plants. Would you remind me how to make simple and real worm tea, please? Okay, so to make worm tea, the formula that you're going to use is dependent on how strong you want your worm tea to be. So that is entirely up to you whether you're going to go 1 gallon of castings to 5 gallons of water, or it can be far less than that. In fact, I have heard of one person who used 1 gallon of water to a 55-gallon drum of water, and that is what he used, just 1 gallon of castings for the 55-gallon water, and that is his worm tea. So you need to just soak it for 24 hours. I see some people soak it for less time than that, but to ensure that you get as much out of the casting as you possibly can, I would say soak it for at least 24 hours and then use it. Now you can either just put the worm tea in the liquid and let it stay there and soak, or you can put it in the water and occasionally stir it if you do not have a pump to aerate it. Then you can just stir it every now and then. So every time you go where it is, you stir it. If it is in a container that you can just give a shake, then you give it a shake. And the reason why you want to stir it or aerate it with a pump is because of the amount of microbes that it will encourage to grow in the worm tea. So the more you aerate it, the more it's going to produce beneficial microbes, because the moisture, the air and the moisture is going to help the population of microbes. And then you don't want to store it for more than 3 days. So just make enough that you can complete within 3 days. Because after that, it doesn't mean that it is bad right away. It just means that it starts to lose its potency after 3 days, unless of course you keep aerating it. Now, if 3 days have passed after you've made your worm tea, it doesn't mean you need to throw it out, because it's still going to have some nutrients and beneficial microbes and stuff like that in it. So you can still use it to water your plants. You just know that you're not getting the full benefit from it as you would if you had used it within the 3 days of making it. I hope that answered your question. Okay. Yeah, so definitely next year I'm going to be working on using the worm tea regularly in my garden. And I think one of the benefits of using it regularly, whether or not you see any signs of pests, is that by doing so, you're not just adding the nutrients to the plant, but in case a few pests come on, and because they're so tiny and their quantity is so low at the beginning, you might not see that they're there until they have multiplied. But if we're in the habit of using the worm tea every 5 to 7 days, then as soon as those pests that the worm tea helps to control presents themselves, then you will get them under control before they can actually start reproducing in your garden. Okay, you're welcome, LP. Okay, so Russell mentioned a few weeks ago that the worm castings that is left over from the worm tea can be used to bait your worms out when you're ready to harvest your castings. Have any of you ever tried that method yet? I've never tried it. Unfortunately, at the time when he mentioned it, I already didn't have a garden outside, so I wasn't making any worm tea. But I think I'm going to definitely be using this method to bait my worms the next time I make worm tea, because Russell says if you use this method, put in the castings that you harvest, that you use for your worm tea, that leftover casting, if you put it in your worm bin, the worms will actually gravitate to it within 3 to 5 days. Now, we have been using the bait method to extract worms from our castings for decades, but with that method, when you put in the food full of bacteria and everything, it takes the worms quite a long time to actually move over, like 2 weeks or even longer, for them to actually gravitate to the food source, or for most of them to gravitate to the food source. So this method that Russell mentioned, it can extract the worms or cause the worm to move over within 3 to 5 days. So Definitely it is worth trying. So I'm going to be going after that method. Okay, you haven't heard of that. Yes, it was a suggestion that he made. You know how Russell is already. He is a walking encyclopedia when it comes to worms. Yes, I just love listening to his comments because he's always got so much information to share. I've learned so much from him in the past year or two. Yes, so definitely I'm going to be using that method. In fact, I'm thinking even though I don't have any need for worm tea at the moment, I can actually use make the worm tea now and see and use the castings to see if like oh I have a few bins that need to be sifted, just how well it will work. He's been doing it for a long time, so when you get advice from the pros, you have to go along with the advice that they give because they have been doing it for so long, right? Yeah, so these are the ways that you can actually use worm tea in the garden. Do you guys know of any other benefit of using worm tea in the garden? It's a good thing I'm finished with that piece of paper. It fell. Yeah, so I don't know of any other benefits apart from those that I mentioned. Perfect for watering seedlings and all. Yeah, so if you guys have any question and if there are any newcomers that are on the live and you have question not necessarily about just worm tea but any question regarding worm farming that you want to ask, then feel free to ask because there are no stupid questions. So whatever questions I can answer, I'll do my best to answer for you guys. And if you guys want to share any of your experiences using worm tea or worm castings, then that would be awesome. So are you guys growing an indoor garden? I have a few plants that I brought in to overwinter. And you know what is funny? My long no, that's not my long sweet pepper. That's my balm chili pepper. I brought that indoors to overwinter. Well, I brought it in just so that the peppers could reach maturity and then harvested the peppers off it. Then I decided just to cut back the plant and see what would happen. I have it in a location, it's not by the window. It's not where it is getting, oh, hi, mom. It's not where it is getting any light apart from whatever light is in the room, natural light is in the room. And the light from the window is not on it directly. And yet, still, I noticed that it is starting to send up new branches. So I'm quite impressed. And then the pepper that I have on the window, mark you, I didn't cut it back, but there wasn't anything to cut back really. It's not doing well. And my lemon balm and my peppermint, they are not doing well, but everything else seemed to be doing well on the windowsill so far. I don't really have a lot of things growing indoors. I have the pepper, the Scotch bonnet pepper, balm chili, peppermint, green, not green onions, escallion. I tried to regrow onion because I wanted to go into seeding, but then I noticed when I went in there today that they are wilting, so I'm going to have to get some more onions and plant. Hopefully, I'll be able to get some seeds this year. I don't think I'll be able to get seeds to plant this year, but at least I'll have seeds for the following year. I don't really like buying the onion seeds because you just get a tiny bit in the package. If it is sweet onions, you get about 4 or 5 times the amount for the same price as if you buy other types of onions. So I'm not fussy about regrowing the sweet onions for the seeds, but like the other onions, definitely I'd like to get some seeds from them because You know me, I'm always complaining about the few seeds that they put in the sachet. And seeds in Saskatchewan is not cheap, not cheap at all. I don't know why it is that everything in Saskatchewan has to be so expensive. I don't know if maybe because we are up north, far long distance away from Toronto and those places. So transportation to get things here is expensive. So I guess that might be the reason why everything in this region is so expensive. But anyway, hopefully I'll be able to get some seeds. But then I noticed my Italian basil that I'm overwintering. It is starting to flower again. I harvested the seeds from it when I brought it indoors, but it's starting to flower again. So who knows? Maybe I'll be getting some more seeds. That would be wonderful. Let's see. Help says, I have some house plants and do want to start some herbs. I need to watch your videos again about rooting mint cuttings. Okay. Yes, I would love to start some herbs indoors, but I don't really have the space for it anymore because the stand that I had created to grow my plants or start my seedlings, I dismantled it. So now I don't have any space to start seedlings, to start any more seedlings. But we'll see what happens with the plants that I'm trying to overwinter. Hopefully, most of them will survive. Some of them I'm not really fussy about because they grow quite easily. The lemon balm and the mint and stuff like that. They tend to grow easily, so no worries where that is concerned. The main thing I'm concerned about are my peppers and stuff like that, especially the Scotch bonnet that takes so long to produce, needs such a long growing season. Because they say that the hotter the pepper is, the more time the plant need or the longer growing season the plant need. That's something I learned last year, which is quite interesting because I always thought that they all would need the same amount of time because I mean it's just pepper, but the hotter the pepper, the more growing time it needs. So I think I'm going to bring in a few more of my Scotch bonnet peppers that I have in the garage, and I think I'm going to start a few of them from seeds now, just to make sure that if the ones I'm overwintering doesn't survive, then I will have a fully mature plant by the time the growing season start. But I think I'm not going to start them until probably next month. And my sweet potatoes, I need to get those started by next month as well. I don't know how many I'm going to be growing this year. I know I'm definitely going to be reducing the amount of sweet potatoes that I grow, but for the purple sweet potato or the purple Japanese yam, I'm definitely going to be growing more of those because from my experience this year, I see that those will do better than the regular sweet potatoes. So I'm looking forward to it. It will be interesting to see how the sweet potatoes and those purple yams will be, or well, they will perform in comparison to this year's growing season. There's a one thing that I keep wondering about with the sweet potato slips, though. The ones that I planted last year, as most of you who have been following me for a while know that the sweet potatoes, I started them from the actual sweet potato that I put in water and allow it to root. So the slips were pretty young, if you keep that in mind. So could that have any effect on how long the sweet potato take to produce? If I started with a mature slip at the same time when I started with these young slips, would I have been able to harvest more sweet potatoes? It will be interesting to see. So I think I'm going to be doing that as an experiment. So I'm going to, the next time I get my hands on some sweet potatoes, I'm going to try to root them and get those young slips. And then I'm going to be planting the slips, some of the slips that I got from the ones that I grew this growing season. And then I'm going to be comparing them when the next growing season start, of course. to see how well they perform. So that, I guess that means I'm gonna have to plant them in separate locations so I don't get them all mixed up. But it will be interesting to see what happened, whether the young slip or the mature slip is going to produce more and things like that. But have you guys ever started from mature slips, or do you just grow from the young slips that you get from the sweet potato? And I think I need to jot down that experiment too. Okay, so that's two experiments. I need to transfer them to my experiment book so I don't forget them. Because a lot of time I jot things down and then I don't go back to the paper that I jot them down on. So I keep forgetting stuff. But I'm gonna keep it where I can see it so I can remember to put it in my experiment book. So how are your worms doing at this time of year? Are they starting to slow down yet? Or are they going at full swing because the time is not very cold yet? I can see that because we've had a warmer autumn than is usual. So I can see that my worms haven't started slowing down just yet. Um, so I don't know when they're going to start slowing down, because once we have snow, it means that it is starting to get cold. So we'll see what's going on with these guys and if they're going to slow down. I'm hoping that I won't have a repeat of what happened in February this year where my worm bin freeze. Yes, that was a very awful experience. So now I know that even if it is frigidly cold and I'm afraid to go outside, I'm definitely gonna have to go out there regularly to check on those worms, because I was so afraid in the spring or in February to go out and look at them because it was so cold, -50, -60 with the wind chill. So I didn't want to go out there. And if I had gone, then I would have been able to rescue some of those worms. But I think I've learned my lesson. I've got to brave the cold and go out there and see what's going on with those guys. But hopefully, it won't be that cold this year, or at least the precautions that I took to keep the garage a little bit warmer will be enough to prevent it from happening. Hopefully, we'll see. Still have a way to go before we get those really terrible temperatures. The only good thing is that when it gets super cold, and super means really, really super cold, -40 and beyond, then it doesn't really last more than a week. So that is the good thing. A week into 2 weeks, that is a good thing. So there's a chance. I think that is why I was able to rescue some of my worms last year. Well, in February, because the freezing didn't, or the that cold snap didn't last for very long, or else I would have lost all the worms in those bins that froze. So are you guys planning to grow anything different from what you usually grow the next growing season? I have a few things different that I'm trying to grow, including some of those seeds that I get from Melanie, because I've never grown the black eyed peas here. Neither have I grown the, what is it? What did she call it? Long beans. So I'm going to, and the chocolate mint. Oh my goodness, I'm just looking forward to the chocolate mint. Yeah, looking forward to growing those. So I have quite a few things. I definitely want to try the kohlrabi. So quite a few things different. I'm gonna try to grow next growing season. So I think I'm at the point now where I'm going to start going through my seeds to see what I have and stuff like that. Get them organized. I can't wait to get them organized so that I can figure out what I need. You guys are pretty quiet. Take it you're very busy at the moment. Okay, you had to take a call, LP. No worries. Okay, you're saying hi. Okay. Yes, I was asking if you guys have anything new that you want to grow this year. And this year, if I can find the seeds, I'm thinking of growing those red onions because I was doing some research on them and I learned that they have more health benefits and more nutrients than the regular ones that I'm using. So I definitely want to try growing those. It would be interesting to see what happened. I didn't have much fortune with my onions this year. It was just, I don't know. I don't know what happened, but the onions didn't do well. In fact, I've never really been successful with onions. I think this is my second or third attempt to grow onions, and I've never really been able to harvest anything with any onions with a nice size, anything that's worth talking about. So definitely I'm gonna try growing onions, but I think next time when I'm growing onions, I'm going to keep them separated from other plants. Apart from my strawberries, of course, I'll try to grow some with my strawberries, but outside of that, I'm gonna try to see if I can grow them by themselves to see what would happen if I'm going to get a better result from what I've been getting so far. Let's see. LP says, I wanted to overwinter peppers, but I had to be honest, I'm not set up right now for that. Oh, okay. Okay. Yes. Everything takes time. We just have to keep planning ahead, and the more we work towards our goal, the more likely that it is that we're gonna accomplish it eventually. More peppers and new tomatoes. Okay. Yes, I'll definitely be growing one new tomato because I'm going to be growing those red